Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." And nowhere is this more true than in the life of deep thinkers. People often romanticize intelligence, insight, and reflection. They imagine that to think deeply is a gift that brings clarity, wisdom, and power. But Jung would warn us, behind the gift of depth lies a shadow, a burden, a curse that makes deep thinkers some of the most misunderstood and isolated people in the world. The darkest truth is this: depth alienates. The more deeply you think, the more distance grows between you and the ordinary world. While others live on the surface, content with routines, distractions, and shallow pleasures, you find yourself constantly questioning, analyzing, peeling back the layers of reality. And this constant questioning does not make life easier. It makes it heavier. Imagine walking through life seeing not just what things are, but what they mean. While others laugh at a joke, you notice the pain hidden inside it. While others enjoy a casual conversation, you see the masks people are wearing. While others chase success, you recognize the emptiness it hides. Jung believed that deep thinkers live closer to the unconscious, the part of the mind most people avoid. And because of this, they are forced to confront truths others never see. But here's the paradox. People do not want to hear these truths. They want comfort, not confrontation. They want affirmation, not reflection. And so, the deep thinker, who sees further and feels deeper, becomes an outsider. Jung would call this the burden of individuation, the painful process of separating from the crowd to discover your true self. And separation always feels like exile. This is why deep thinkers often feel lonely, even in a crowd. You can be surrounded by people, laughing and talking, and yet feel completely alone, because what occupies your mind cannot be spoken in that space. The gap between your depth and their surface becomes unbridgeable. You long for someone who understands, but most people cannot meet you there. And so, you carry your thoughts in silence until silence becomes your only companion. But the curse goes even further. Jung knew that thinking deeply means not only seeing truths about others, but also about yourself. The shadow you discover in the world is the shadow you must face in yourself. You cannot escape the flaws, the fears, the contradictions that most people bury under distractions. For you, they surface in every quiet moment. And the more you see, the heavier the burden becomes. Depth, instead of freeing you, chains you to endless reflection. Society does not make this easier. We live in a world that rewards speed, not depth. People are praised for being entertaining, not insightful. Loud voices drown out thoughtful ones. Shallow trends dominate over timeless truths. And in this world, the deep thinker is not celebrated. They are ignored, dismissed, even mocked. Jung would say this is because the collective resists what threatens its comfort. And nothing threatens comfort more than truth. This is the darkest truth about deep thinkers. The very gift that allows you to see more is also what isolates you from others. The very clarity you gain becomes the reason people turn away. The very questions you ask become the reasons you struggle to find peace. Depth does not feel like light. It feels like carrying a weight no one else even sees. And yet, here is the cruelest part. Because you see more, you cannot unsee it. You cannot return to the innocence of surface living. You cannot simply switch off your awareness. Once you have looked into the unconscious, once you have seen the patterns of human behavior, the masks, the illusions, ordinary life loses its simplicity. What amuses others feels empty to you. What satisfies others feels hollow. You are cursed with vision, and vision comes at the cost of peace. This is why many deep thinkers wrestle with despair, not because they are weak, but because they feel too much. They notice too much. They cannot turn away from the cracks in society, the hypocrisy in relationships, the lies people tell themselves to survive. They carry this knowledge silently, and it eats at them. Jung himself knew this burden well. His own explorations into the unconscious nearly broke him, leading to visions and inner battles that haunted his life. He survived them only by turning them into wisdom. But he never denied how heavy the burden was. So when people say they envy deep thinkers, when they admire intelligence from afar, they do not see the whole picture. They see the wisdom, but not the weight. They see the clarity, but not the cost. The darkest truth is that deep thinkers often live with loneliness, alienation, and inner torment. They walk paths others avoid. They confront shadows others deny. And because of this, they often feel less like they were given a gift, and more like they were given a curse. Jung's insight is chilling. Depth is not what makes you happy. Depth is what makes you whole. And wholeness requires pain. The deep thinker cannot escape this. They can only learn to carry it with strength. Carl Jung understood that society is not built to reward depth. It is built to reward conformity. And this is the second darkest truth about deep thinkers. The world does not just misunderstand them, it fears them. Why? Because to think deeply is to question, and questioning threatens stability. Society survives by convincing the majority to believe in the same stories, follow the same rules, and accept the same illusions. But the deep thinker, by nature, resists this. They see the cracks in the story. They notice the contradictions. They refuse to accept surface answers. And in doing so, they become a threat to the collective order. Jung called this the problem of the collective unconscious. Every society holds shared beliefs, myths, and values that bind people together. These myths are necessary. They give meaning, structure, and identity. But when a deep thinker pierces through them, when they ask why, or what if this is a lie, they threaten to unravel the fabric that holds the group together. And so, society reacts not with gratitude, but with hostility. History proves this. Socrates was sentenced to death for corrupting the youth simply because he asked them to question the world. Jesus was crucified for challenging the religious and political order of his time. Galileo was silenced for pointing out a truth that contradicted the church. Time and again, deep thinkers are punished, not because they are wrong, but because they expose truths that the collective cannot bear to face. The same dynamic plays out in everyday life. In schools, children who ask too many questions are labeled troublemakers. At work, employees who challenge the system are pushed out. In relationships, partners who overanalyze are told they are too much. Society rewards those who play along and punishes those who disturb the illusion. This is why deep thinkers so often feel out of place. They are not rejected because they lack value, but because their value is threatening. Their insight shines light into places people prefer to keep dark. Jung knew that most people cannot tolerate too much reality. They need illusions to survive. And the deep thinker, by removing those illusions, becomes dangerous. But there is another layer. Jung believed that when someone resists you strongly, it often means you are touching their shadow. Deep thinkers activate the shadow of society. When they point out hypocrisy, when they expose lies, when they reveal the emptiness behind success, or the hidden motives in relationships, they force people to confront truths they are desperate to avoid. And avoidance often turns to hostility. People would rather silence the messenger than face the message. Think of how often the deep thinker is mocked, called weird, overthinking, negative. These labels are not accurate descriptions. They are defenses. They are society's way of neutralizing the threat. If they can frame the deep thinker as broken, then they don't have to face the fact that he might be right. This is why many deep thinkers retreat into solitude. They learn that their thoughts, though true, are rarely welcome. They discover that honesty is punished, while flattery is rewarded. And so, to protect themselves, they withdraw. They carry their depth in silence, not because they want to, but because society gives them no choice. The tragedy is that this withdrawal only deepens their loneliness. The very gift that could help others becomes the reason they are excluded. Jung himself faced this isolation. His ideas were often ridiculed, his visions dismissed, his depth misunderstood. But he also knew that this rejection was not a sign of weakness. It was the price of seeing clearly in a world that prefers blindness. This raises the darkest truth of all. Deep thinkers are feared because they expose what society is built to hide. And in exposing it, they often become scapegoats. When the collective is threatened, it turns on the individual who refuses to conform. This is why whistleblowers are silenced, why prophets are persecuted, why thinkers are exiled. The world would rather destroy the thinker than destroy its illusions. But Jung also believed that this exile has meaning. It forces the deep thinker into individuation, into becoming their true self, apart from the crowd. Society's rejection becomes the crucible that forges authenticity. The pain of being misunderstood becomes the path to wisdom. This does not make the suffering easier, but it gives it purpose. So why does society fear deep thinkers? Because they are mirrors. They reflect back truths that people would rather not see. They remind the world of its shadow. They strip away illusions that make life bearable. And in doing so, they reveal that the comfort people cling to is built on lies. Jung warned that the unconscious is not just a source of wisdom. It is also a source of terror. And this is the darkest truth of all about deep thinkers. The same mind that gives them vision also threatens to consume them. Depth is not only isolating, it is dangerous. Because the further you descend into your own thoughts, the more likely you are to be pulled into despair. Why does this happen? Because deep thinkers live in constant confrontation with the shadow. Most people survive by ignoring it, distracting themselves with routines, entertainment, or shallow pleasures. But the deep thinker cannot look away. They notice hypocrisy, emptiness, and contradiction everywhere. And what they see outside, they also see inside. They discover not only the flaws of the world, but the darkness within their own soul. Jung himself knew this danger intimately. During his confrontation with the unconscious, he was haunted by visions, dreams, and inner voices that nearly broke him. He admitted that he came close to madness, but he believed this confrontation was necessary for individuation, for becoming whole. Still, he never denied how dangerous it was. Many deep thinkers walk this same edge. Their thoughts take them further than others dare to go, but sometimes too far for their own stability. This is why many deep thinkers struggle with depression, anxiety, or despair. It is not because they are weak. It is because they see too much. They cannot pretend the world is simple. They cannot blind themselves to suffering. They cannot ignore the futility in endless cycles of human behavior. Their awareness, instead of freeing them, traps them in a prison of reflection. And here lies the self-destruction. The thinker begins to doubt the value of life itself. If everything is shadow, if everyone is blind, if illusions rule the world, what is the point? This question haunts them. For some, it becomes unbearable. History is full of brilliant minds who ended their own lives consumed by the very thoughts that set them apart. Jung understood this risk. He wrote that when a person looks too long into the unconscious without guidance, they risk drowning in it. Depth without balance destroys. Insight without grounding becomes obsession, and obsession corrodes from within. But the destruction of deep thinkers is not always so dramatic. Often, it is quieter. They isolate themselves so much that loneliness becomes their only companion. They struggle to maintain relationships because others cannot handle their intensity. They sabotage opportunities because their mind talks them out of action. They remain trapped in analysis, never moving, never resting. Their own thoughts become their enemy. Society does not help. Instead of supporting their vision, it dismisses them as overthinkers or negative. This rejection deepens their alienation. The thinker begins to wonder if something is wrong with them, and in that wondering, the spiral begins. Self-doubt, self-loathing, despair. The very clarity that should guide them becomes the blade that cuts them down. This is the paradox Jung revealed. The gift of depth is inseparable from its curse. To think deeply is to suffer deeply. To see clearly is to carry pain. To uncover truth is to risk madness. The same light that reveals wisdom also exposes darkness. And the deeper the thinker goes, the greater the danger of being consumed by what they find. But does this mean deep thinkers are doomed? Not necessarily. Jung believed that the only way to survive depth is to integrate it, to bring the unconscious into balance with the conscious, to balance thought with action, to ground vision with life. The thinker who refuses to ground themselves will drown. But the thinker who learns to live with both shadow and light can transform their curse into wisdom. The tragedy is that many never reach this balance. They remain trapped in endless loops of reflection, unable to find peace. Their lives become smaller, even as their minds grow larger. They die with truths unspoken, with visions unshared, with a world that never understood them. This is the darkest truth. That depth, left unchecked, destroys not only relationships and connection, but the thinker themselves. Now I'll leave you with the question Jung would ask. Do you see your depth as a gift, or has it already begun to destroy you? Comment your thoughts below. I read every single one, and you'll realize you are not the only one carrying this burden. And if this message struck you, don't just watch, support. Like the video, subscribe to Psychatic, and share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. And if you feel called, consider leaving a super thanks to help keep this channel alive. Remember Jung's warning. To think deeply is to suffer deeply. But in that suffering lies the possibility of transformation. The question is, will you carry it, or will you let it carry you?